All right. Well, welcome back to the Superhost Labs podcast. We are the Carwells. My name is Sarah.
And I'm Emily.
And today we have a very special guest, one of our longest friends in the space, in all honesty, Bailey Kramer. Hello, Bailey.
Woohoo! Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for coming on. This has been amazing. I don't know why we didn't reach out to you sooner, but Claire said, hey, what's up? And we're like, duh. Oh my gosh, why haven't we reached out to him? Okay, so before we get too far into this, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people who do not know who you are?
Absolutely. So my name is Bailey Kramer. I've been transforming what I do every day, it feels like. But what I'm focusing on now is Airbnbs and co-hosting in particular. I bought my first property at 20 years old, which was a fix and flip. Did a couple long-term rentals, and then we can talk about kind of the journey later, but I accidentally fell into short-term rentals. Like, I feel like everyone says that, but I actually did. I really had no intention of getting in. So I accidentally fell into that, bought two short-term rentals, and then that's when the co-hosting business just kind of kicked off, and that's been my main focus for the past 10-ish months.
Yes, we love that. For me in particular, I think that there are two super special things about your story that are really impressive. One, I love that you are a college dropout who's pursuing real estate. That is amazing. It resonates. And two, and that you started at such a young age. You know, real estate really is a buy and hold situation. And so you're playing the long game, starting early. So you'll probably end up wealthier than all of us. And then two, one thing that I think you're doing incredibly well in your co-hosting side is, you know, everyone that we talk to that does co-hosting, they typically start co-hosting by pursuing like arbitrage properties. They're like, start with the 1-1s. And for those of our listeners who don't understand how co-hosting works and how you get paid, it's a percentage of the overall revenue of the properties. And so for co-hosts, you know, the larger property you have, typically the more you make. And so when we're watching you grow your co-hosting business, you've got these massive properties that
they're so big.
They're so big. I'm like, how is this guy finding these places with like tennis courts and castles and what? So anyway, those are the two portions of your story that I'm super excited to dive into on this episode.
Awesome.
Yeah. I remember when we did a live with you a while back, I was just talking to Sarah about this. You told us that you had like dropped out of college, and I have a master's degree, and I honestly wish I had dropped out of college. Like while I was in school, I was like, Emily, just quit. Like you're not going to use this, but I just finished because I felt like I needed to. So when you told us, I was like, is it bad? I want to say congratulations.
I remember that. I do remember that.
I like really feel like I wish I had the guts to have just like quit, because I really didn't need to go for my master's. I didn't even need to finish my bachelor's, if I'm being completely honest. But I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I had had the guts to just drop out of school and go pursue like what I actually wanted to do. So I thought that was really cool that you actually did that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So before we really dig into some of these topics, we start every single episode with an Airbnb horror story, and I'm sure you have a million. So let's kick off with that and tell us your worst Airbnb horror story to date.
Yeah, the hardest part's honestly just picking one of the horror stories. I'll tell you actually the most recent one. So here's what happened. We were in the process of switching management softwares. We were using, I started with hospitable.com, then we used Guesty. Now we're back to Hospitable. We can talk about all the reasons later, but that's kind of what happened. During the transition, when we were using Guesty, our biggest problem was that the calendars between Airbnb and Vrbo didn't sync together. So we had to there's like a setting on Airbnb and Vrbo where you can kind of like manually link the calendars, and it takes like 30 minutes to an hour sometimes to sync together. So whenever we got bookings, I would triple check just to make sure it synced together, and then also it was supposed to automatically connect. And again, this is one of the reasons why we switched back to Hospitable, because our Vrbo account wasn't integrated with Guesty yet, and it was taking over 6 months. It was pretty crazy. But I'm at dinner for my friend's birthday. We're at like a Japanese where they cook in front of hibachi. We're at a hibachi thing, and my partner on this property, he texts me like a voicemail, And so I just listened to it really, really quickly. And it says, it's from the guest who checked in and said, hey, it looks like someone's here. And I was like, oh my God. So I ran outside. I checked my calendar, well, both calendars. And I'm like, yep, we double booked it this time. So that was terrible. So we had people who from Verbo, they checked in first. So, and they checked in like 2 hours earlier. So I almost thought it was only fair. I mean, nothing was fair in that situation, but it was only best if the people who checked in first and was already settled in stayed, and they actually paid more money. And then that actually had nothing to do with it, though. And then the people on Airbnb. Also, Airbnb has better customer support, so I felt better having Airbnb handle them. But long story short, this lady is like, she was actually very nice compared to her situation. Like, if that was me, I would be going off. It's not fun. But this lady, she was nice, but then she's also like, yeah, we only had like family from all over the country and one from Canada fly in for this. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. There's nothing really else I could say except I'm truly sorry. I really felt bad. And that only happened like a month ago, again, because we were switching softwares. But that was terrible.
So what did they do? Like, what did Airbnb, where did you end up moving them to?
Well, so the worst part about it is Airbnb service is usually pretty fast, but I was on hold with them for 30 minutes. So I was like, I had them on hold on one hand. I was eating my rice and my chicken and steak on one hand, and they took forever. So I told the guests, listen, I'm on hold with Airbnb. They're going to get you relocated. Don't worry about it. And then also during that time, I was messaging every house nearby saying, hey, do you have room for tonight? I'm a host and I messed up. And no one was available. So eventually Airbnb, like 30 minutes later, finally got a hold of me. I told them the situation, and then they said that they were going to handle the guest. And that's what they did. Airbnb goes, are you okay giving them a refund? I'm like, yeah, duh. Like, of course, like, charge that right now. Like, no problem. So, yeah.
That's so encouraging, though, that Airbnb was kind of able to, like, resituate it for you. Because I, like, once you reach out to guests and you're like, or other hosts and you're like, oh my God, nothing's available, I would just be at, like, a loss. I'd be like, go find a hotel and we'll pay for it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they might have had to have gotten I'm guessing they got a hotel because none of the properties were available. So my guess is they just went for a hotel. That's
Oh, what a nightmare. Oh, it hurts.
It was bad. Yeah.
Good example of always being on call as a co-host, though. You're like eating your food and on the phone.
Yeah. Like, look, I know that your vacation is ruined, but just know that, like, my night is also ruined over this. Like, this is not fun for anyone involved.
Question that I wouldn't really know the answer to this, so because I don't have my own Airbnb, so I don't use them yet. But so would that guest be able to still leave you a review because they booked it?
Good question. So I was talking to Airbnb, and since I had to cancel the reservation, technically yes, they would. But then I would also get penalized as a host via, like, they'd like leave something that said like I canceled the reservation. They'd probably, the algorithm, I don't freaking know, that'd probably get messed up too. But the person I was talking to on Airbnb, like overseas person, but Airbnb support, I was like, listen, this has never happened to me once. This was like a complete mistake. I promise you this will not happen again. And she's like, totally understand. I'll cancel it for you, essentially. So the guest cannot leave a review. You won't be docked at all. There's no penalties. She basically gave me like a one-time pass, which was really nice.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yes.
Yeah,
you got lucky there.
Yeah. Very.
Because like I've had a couple of nightmare situations where like, you just, and not where it's my fault, right? It's like where a guest is like being absolutely insane. And Airbnb is still like, well, the guest doesn't, like, they don't want to cancel on their end, so you're just, and I'm like, what? Like, how did, like, you just didn't prioritize the host at all. But I've been seeing Airbnb's stock is tanking, so I'm like, is that because all the shareholders are hosts and because Airbnb hasn't prioritized hosts for so long that all of a sudden Airbnb is, like, actually willing to play ball now, or what?
Yeah, honestly. And if you guys remember about like a month ago-ish, like sometime in April, I think it was, Airbnb came out with the new their new update that was to come, and it was going to be about how hosts. It was literally like this situation, but luckily, our situation happened before it even rolled out, and then Airbnb ended up canceling it. But essentially, in a situation like I just described, I would have been fully responsible for relocating the guest 100%. So luckily, it didn't go into play then, and luckily Airbnb changed it because I think a lot of hosts just complained because they don't put hosts first.
Yeah. Well, it's always interesting in our comment sections. Like every now and then we'll make a video or a TikTok or something about like bad reviews, 4-star reviews, how they negatively impact hosts. And you'll see so many guests in there be like, Airbnb prioritizes the host. And I'm like, oh my God, that could not be further from the truth. Like we are just left on the hook for almost everything. So
for sure.
Well, that feels good. It's a feel good story ending for you as a host.
Yeah. It all worked out. It always does.
Yeah. Am I back?
Yes.
Yeah. It's Kim.
Oh.
I have a slight emergency today that we can kind of talk about that I'm going through currently, but the lake house in Michigan, like typically it doesn't get like warm enough to need air conditioning until like late June, early July, and we had a really late winter, so we weren't anticipating it being at least until then. Well, I have guests checking in today, and we have like a warm spell in Michigan, and it's like 88 degrees today, and our house doesn't have central air. It's just got an AC unit, and the AC unit is an hour away at my parents' house. And so our cleaners texted me this morning, and they're like, Sarah, it's like 80 degrees in your house right now. And I'm like, no.
Oh,
no.
That's not fun.
So that's what we're dealing with this morning. So it just never ends. We're always on call.
Never ends. Yep.
But before we get kind of diving into these questions, I have a couple of questions for you that were spurred from going through and stalking you last night and catching up on everything that you've been doing. First question is, so I saw that you are adding a private boat rental to one of your properties. And that's something that obviously Jeremy Worden has done in the past and had a lot of success with. And we've kind of picked his brain on how he's structuring that with his Airbnb. How are you structuring it? Are you offering it as like an Airbnb experience? Are you renting it through Boat Setter? Like, what do the logistics look like of that?
Yeah, for sure. So with the properties that I own and manage, there's basically investors involved with all of them. So with the boat rentals in particular, I'm not an owner in the boat rentals. I'm more of just managing it. And the way that we have it structured is, so guest, puts an inquiry in, they have their reservation confirmed, and then automatically, but we send them a message that says, hey, by the way, we have a private boat rental. We give them a link to our website, which is, I don't know the exact name of Fair Harbor. I think Fair Harbor is the name of the software that we use. And essentially they can just book straight through there. And the way we have it structured with our properties is, since again, we have investors with all of them. So the people who own the boats, which are some of the investors, are giving a kickback to the properties. So it's almost like it's just a nice feature to have in the first place. And then we're also, for our guests, then we're also all getting a kickback from it as well. And then I'm, of course, getting another kickback from managing it too.
Right. So they know that, the homeowner is also the boat owner, correct?
Yes. We tell them that it's like our sister company.
Okay, there we go, yeah.
Yeah, so we say like, hey, by the way, we have exclusive or private boat rentals we rent out to our guests. And then we say, and we have like 2 properties up and running this second, but we have 8 more. We have like 10 more that are coming within the next couple weeks. Actually, 7 of them just listed yesterday. But we have 2 boats for essentially like 10 different reservations. So we say to them like, this is private to our rentals as a company, but make sure you book ASAP so you can reserve a boat.
That's brilliant. I love it. I think that, when we were talking to Jeremy about it, we had like kind of talked through how it could get sticky if it was like basically an Airbnb experience, because if one thing goes wrong in the house, then you get a bad review on both and vice versa. And so, I think it's brilliant that you've got that like sister company paired in there. So if they have a bad experience with one, it's like siloed into one instead of pouring into the other.
For sure. And then also too, like we have a lot of reservations through Vrbo, and I guess someone could just book an Airbnb experience on Vrbo, but I just crossing platforms too many times. everything that I like to do with Airbnb or really just short-term rentals is get one thing on top that can integrate with any platform I'm on, like guidebooks. I don't want to use like the Airbnb guidebooks because like, what if I'm on Vrbo? Because I am on Vrbo or Booking.com. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, that was my main question as I was looking through your stuff here lately. So I'll let Emily kick off these questions as well.
Yeah, so obviously we know that your journey with real estate started at a super young age for you, but can you kind of give everybody like a background on how you got into real estate investing and at the age that you did?
For sure. So basically, ever since I was a kid, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like watching Shark Tank, I would sit there and be like, that's me. Like I pictured myself as an entrepreneur. I wanted to, like, the couple key things I wanted to do besides, like, I was always fascinated in business, but it was like, I obviously want to make a lot of money. I wanted something that I could have a lot of time control over. And those are kind of like the two main things. If I can make a lot of money, control my time, and then ultimately be the one making the decisions, like, that was cool for me. So when I went to college, I had no idea what I actually wanted to do, but I didn't post the video yet. I got to do that like today or tomorrow. But I made a video my first day of college, which was a promise to myself of what the next 4 years were going to be like. And I'm not going to spoil the video too much, but essentially it was that I was going to create my own business. And so it's funny, in the video I say, I'm going to create my own business. I don't have to, so I can relax on a beach instead of in a desk. That was like what I said in the video. And for me, it's not actually about doing nothing. That's just what I said when I was 18 years old. But fast forward, sophomore year of college, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I was just searching for personal finance books because that kind of fit in the realm of business, personal finance, something I was interested in. And in the book from Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, he mentioned real estate investing. So everything in the book, I was like, this man's a genius. Like, whatever he's saying, like, this is the first time I'm hearing about this stuff, but he's smart. So I look him up afterwards or before, and it says that Robert Kiyosaki's worth like $100+ million. And it says that a lot of it was through real estate. And I was like, okay, if I like what he's saying in the book, he's talking about real estate, clearly did something right with money, I'm going to pursue this real estate thing. So then it was a journey of finding bigger pockets, listening to their podcasts, reaching out to people. And that was like the beginning of how I even got introduced to real estate. It was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then my journey started with really learning from bigger pockets.
Yeah. It seems like so many people started with Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like if there is one book that gets carried across every single entrepreneur ever, it's that book. So there is some secret sauce in there that really seems to like put a fire under people.
Yeah, seriously. And I got lucky that I found it. Like no one that I talked to before read it or gave it to me. I just like stumbled. I was looking on like top 10 business books, top 10 personal finance books. That book kept on coming up. So I'm like, all right, I got to read it. And then now I made everyone that I know who didn't read it, I make them read it. Like my roommates, I was like, you got to read this. My brother, like, you got to read this. And yeah, it's just such an awesome book.
Yeah, a lot of gold in there. Well, that's amazing. I think too, like with what's interesting about your business structure as well is, you know, when you were 20 years old and you're purchasing these first properties, they're not glamorous properties, right? They're like very standard, like, look, I'm starting at the bottom. Here we are. This is what I can afford now. It's not sexy. It's not glorious. It's not something that's going to end up on Airbnb's first page and be like showy. But you like, that's where you started. And also the properties that you're managing are definitely like feels intentional of where you want to be, right? So it's like you're learning through other people's properties of where you want to be while still being willing to go through kind of the mud at the front end that a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can't afford a property. And I'm like, no, you can't afford the property you want. There's a big difference.
Right. And even, yeah, for sure. And to add on top of that, when I was 20, even like now, like I don't have a W-2 job, so I don't have like from a bank's perspective, I'm not their desired person. So all the deals that I've done on the buying side have been through creative financing. So that's either seller financing, subject to, or buying cash. So I've never like gotten a loan from a bank. It's all been just raising capital and using seller financing or financing that's already been in place. And then also too with like just a lot of limiting beliefs I hear people say, and limiting beliefs I had was like, you need a lot of money to get started. Like I got started with $2,000, and in hindsight, I didn't actually need that money at all because we did a fix and flip. The guy I partnered with was like, can you throw in $2,000 but we raised 120 grand, so we could have raised $2,000 more. So like I didn't need any money to get. It was kind of stupid, I know. We didn't need any money to get started. I didn't use a credit score. Like there was no credit score needed for that first deal. The experience, I found someone who had more experience. We kind of just learned it as we went. So a lot of like the limiting beliefs can be conquered by just leveraging other people's resources.
1,000%. And I mean, even with the $2,000, it's like, it feels like whoever your mentor was, Emily, I saw that you wanted to talk, so sorry, I'm talking over you. But it feels like, for them, it wasn't about the $2,000. It's about you having skin in the game. And the $2,000 for you was big skin in the game, right? Regardless of the overall budget. Yeah.
And since we were both kind of new, he had a little bit more experience, but still, like, I would not say we had any systems down. He had some more knowledge than me, though. We realized that when we raised the capital, we were like, all right, we might be a little bit over budget already from the start. Like we didn't. This wasn't like this wasn't like a perfectly smooth deal by any means. We got out good, but it was kind of like, yeah, if we just put in $2,000, like I think we'll be okay type thing.
Oh yeah, I literally just made a video about this on TikTok about how like, no matter what you're doing, even if you're not investing money right now, getting into a community where you're gaining knowledge from other people is the biggest benefit. Like I said, I don't have any personal Airbnbs, but I've learned so much through designing, which didn't really cost me any money to get into. And then now I have an entire community of people that I learn from. And I know a lot about setting up an Airbnb because of the experiences that I've had. So you don't have to invest money right away. You can get in on the ground floor just learning from other people.
100%.
1,000%. Yeah, that community is kind of your make or break. Absolutely. As far as like you having to deal with creative financing and dealing with investors, what's kind of your secret sauce in meeting people who have these extravagant properties or who are willing to get into creative financing with you? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so for the first 4 deals, I purchased 6 properties total. We sold 2 of them as fix and flips. But essentially what we do is we would cold call and text message vacant properties and just say, hey, I noticed your house. Are you interested in selling? That was like the simplest. I mean, we a lot of trial and error, but at the end of the day, if someone's like, what should I say? Just keep it simple. Hey, I noticed your house on 123 Main Street. Are you interested in selling it? So we did that, and for every house that we bought, we had to reach out to 2,000 properties to get one deal. And one of them was from a realtor, one of them was from a wholesaler. So that's technically 4 properties that we bought from direct to seller, and that's 2,000. So that's 8. We had to reach out to 8,000 people to get four deals. And essentially, these 4 properties, they were not glamorous. It was owners who were in some type of pain in some way, shape, or form. So we actually bought 2 properties from one person, and his pain was properties were completely gutted. They've been gutted for a couple of years now, and his wife was just like, they lived a couple hours away, and his wife was like, just sell the property. So we took those over in not great condition and fixed them up. And then one of them, we bought my first property, the fix and flip. The owner, he owned like a air conditioning company in the area. So he was trying to like run a company, do fix and flips, renovate his own house. He had like a barn that he had so many things going on that he's like, honestly, if you guys want to just take this at the price I bought it at, all power to you. So we just like different owners had different pain.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure like in the process of talking to 8,000 different people, like just staying the course, like understanding your true north at that point had to be like incredibly important, because I mean, after 200 no's, you'd be like, what am I doing here? You know?
Yeah, and luckily we had like software, so we didn't have to actually talk to that many people. So like what we'd first do is like text everybody. So we text 2,000 people, and then we'd get about 200 to 400 people to respond on text. A lot of those people said like no or F you or whatever. So we ended up talking to right around 40 people per 2,000. So that's like almost 200 people, I would say, that we had to actually pick up the phone and talk to. And we talked to, I'd say, a little bit more, because in the beginning it was strictly cold calling. So yeah, we talked to hundreds of people for sure. And it took a lot of time to even get on the phone with those people.
Yeah. And then once you do get someone that's interested, you're like so excited that you're like, how do I like reel it in to like not freak this person out?
Exactly.
All right, Emily, do you want the next question?
Sure. So how much money did you, so you said you had the $2,000 to initially invest in that first fix and flip, but for like your first actual Airbnb property, how much did you invest as far as like furniture goes, down payment if you purchased the house, stuff like that?
Yeah. So again, my strength has not been like financing. I've done creative financing, and like I basically have gotten by, but looking back, I would have structured all my deals differently. So for this first Airbnb property, and I'll give you the exact structure. Another one that we had on the cold call and text message, this guy, he was trying to sell his property for a while, but he just wanted too much money for it. It was not in great shape, and he just didn't want to budge on his number. So long story short, we did seller financing. We kept his number, his purchase price, which actually wasn't terrible. Just there's not that many people in the market or in this market that were looking for a big fixer upper. So we got the purchase price was $779,000, so close to 800, and he wanted $100,000 down, which is roughly 12.45% or something like that. So $100,000 down. We needed $80,000 for the rehab, so that's $180,000 of cash. But we raised that from investors. This is where I messed up on the financing piece. But again, I was brand new to this was like my first Airbnb deal, so sure, hindsight's 20/20, but no regrets. So we had no idea how much this property was going to make. We just we looked at the property, we looked on Airbnb and said, okay, what could this property bring in on Airbnb? And we saw our next door neighbor had a property. It was like smaller than ours. Ours was going to be better frontage, better yard. Everything about ours was better once we got it rehabbed. And he was renting it for like $1,300 a night in the summer. So we said, okay, what if we just did $1,000 a night in the summer, and we did like $4,000 a night $4,000 per month in the winter, and we were just super conservative with it. And we calculated it, and it was about $130,000 that we were projecting. And just to take a quick step back, when we found this property, our first approach was, can we make this a long-term rental? We said no. Can we do a fix and flip? We were like, we probably could, but like way too much money on the line than what we were willing to risk. And then it was, okay, could we make this an Airbnb? So we estimated that it's going to bring in $130,000 in gross revenue. So then when it was time to raise capital, those were our numbers that we were running off of. So we need to make sure that we divided the equity properly so that our investors were going to get a good return. The way we did that was we essentially just divided the amount of money that you put into the deal by the $180,000, and that's your equity split. So for example, if you put in $90,000, half of the money, you get half of the equity. I put in $15,000, I want to say, which was like 9% roughly. You guys can double check the math there. And now fast forward, the property's going to do $250,000. So we could have easily taken way more than we did.
Yep.
But you live and you learn, so I'm not going to kick myself over it. We could have easily done it though. But we wanted our investors to be safe and comfortable, so that was fine. And then also our management fee, we charge ourselves, we had no idea what to charge. So we're like, we'll just do a 10% management fee. So we were doing 10% for a while, and we actually just increased it to 20 because we were doing so much work for this thing that it just wasn't fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you break down for like people who have no idea what it means, what seller financing is? Because I think there's probably a lot of people that don't even know that that's an option. So how can you break it down how it worked for you?
For sure. So in the simplest terms, seller financing. There's really one, for like a clean seller financing transaction, the seller needs to own their house free and clear, meaning they don't have a mortgage on it. That could either mean they bought the house cash, or that could mean that they've owned it for X amount of years. Now they paid off their mortgage. So when you go to buy that house at whatever price they're asking for, they're going to be left with hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. Some people are like, that's great. Like, I love sitting on a lot of money. But some people are like, that just creates a huge burden from tax standpoint, and it creates a headache of like, now what I do with all this money. And people is like, funny, it's like, but it's actually like a rich person problem, and it's like an actual problem. So for this, so seller financing, essentially how it works is we go to the homeowner and we say, hey, we're interested in buying your house. Would you be interested in selling it on terms or seller financing? And obviously after negotiations, you pretty much you can come up with whatever terms you want. So instead of getting a mortgage from the bank and the bank saying to you, hey, Bailey, you can buy this property, but you have to put 20% down. I'm going to charge you a 4% interest rate. And the bank giving me the terms, the bank's not involved at all. And all the terms are negotiated between us, the investors, and the property owners. So whatever we agree to, it's like a private transaction. So for this one, when he said he wants 12.5% down or $100,000 down, we gave that to him directly. And then the mortgage, the principal and the interest, and his interest rate, which was 3%, which we negotiated, we pay that to him every single month. So there's no bank involved. It's just like peer-to-peer, owner to seller, or owner to buyer transaction.
Gotcha. So it's like a step up from like rent to own, kind of, right? Like a step up from that, because you're doing a down payment still, but you're paying monthly to the person who actually owns it to then eventually buy it from them, right?
Yes, but like it's just, you have the same rights as if you own a house. It's like if you buy a house that you have a mortgage on, it's like, who owns the house? Well, the bank technically owns a majority of it, but like you own the house. So same thing with this is, we don't have the option to buy it. It's like we already bought it. We just need to pay off the bank, aka the seller.
Gotcha.
So if we just skip our mortgage payment, just like if you skipped your mortgage payment to the bank, they could foreclose on the house and they could take it back. But it's similar to rent to own in structure, except the only thing is we're not renting it, we're just buying it.
Yeah. It's just like the next level of
it's
exactly. Kind of same structure though. Okay. Yeah.
I love it. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's a really nice option for people who might not have like the percent down that like the bank would need, but you can negotiate that better direct to the person who actually owns the house, because I feel like banks are hard to negotiate with.
Lenders are hard.
Yeah, and we're in May. I think it's like seller financing works even better when the interest rates are higher, because when interest rates are low, it's like people are like, why don't you just go get a loan? I'm like, I can't, because they're gonna whack me on it. So we kind of, I'm glad I did the seller financing when it was like, I think the hardest to do it. I think it's only getting easier now that interest rates are going up, because the owners are still gonna want their high value for their house, but the only way it's gonna work is if you have a really low interest rate, because that's gonna ultimately dictate the monthly payment. So I think it's only getting easier now that interest rates are starting to go up a little bit.
Yeah. And especially for people like us who like, oh my gosh, when we were trying to get financing for the lake house, and both me and my husband are W-2, and like for me personally, like we live on my husband's income. So I like do the entire Airbnb side of our business, but I don't ever pay myself. Right. Like I don't need to, like that money, we're reinvesting 100% of it. And so when you go to the bank and they're like, how much do you make? I'm like, nothing. Like $0 to be exact.
Right.
It's just always such a rough conversation where I'm like, oh, I swear we're like responsible. Like you can see our business bank account and what that looks like. But
right.
It's just such a sticky conversation every single time. So yeah, I mean, you have to get creative in situations like that. So it's amazing how you got started.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so next question for you. What is your range of profitability per property per month in your niche? We can talk about your properties individually and or the properties that you manage for.
Yeah, so the properties that like my management fee, when I look at my properties now or the properties that co-hosting I want to bring on, it's usually around $1,000 per month per property. But but that's an average, because in the low months it could be $600, but in the high months it could be $2,000. And there's more low months than there are high months, but it averages together. So with co-hosting, on average I charge, and from now on, like I told you in the beginning, I charged 10%. Now we bumped it to 20. So from now on I only charge 20%. So if a house is bringing in $5,000 a month, that's $1,000 a month to me. And $5,000 per month is $60,000, if I'm not mistaken, $60,000 per year from a house. So the houses that bring in $120,000 per year, that's going to spit me off $2,000 per month. that's kind of how I analyze properties. I have one property that's more of a traveling nurse rental that's going to bring in $2,500 a month, which is 25. I don't even know the math on that. Like almost $30,000 for the year. So that one's like, I just know like that's $500 a month. But that's kind of how I look at my properties.
Yes. And then when you're looking at properties, like talk to me about how you go out and figure out, how do you pitch yourself to people who don't have a co-host? Like how are you specifically targeting these massive properties? Because I feel like people who are getting into co-hosting, they're like at a loss of like where to start and how to like poach, you know, potential investors who are willing to take a chance on you.
Yeah. So there's two different answers to the question. So how am I doing it versus how do I recommend other people do it? So the way I did it and I'm currently doing it is, number one, I started with buying a property. I actually had 2 Airbnbs up and running, and then people noticed me, and then referrals came in. So everything that I've done has been through referrals. As far as those big properties, one of them I'm a part owner in, like I mentioned. One of them, and then 2 other ones, is from one of the partners from the property. So we had that relationship. And then the most recent one that I got, a really big house, has a pool, 5,000 square feet, right on the water too. I get a call. I keep on getting a call from this number, and I never answer. I hate when people call me that I don't have their number. And even if I have their number, it's like, just text me first. But anyways, this person calls me, goes, "Hey, do you manage the Roxana Resort?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "I have a property on whatever street, and we just fired our manager, and we need someone like right now." I'm like, okay, I vetted him a little bit, and then got the paper signed like literally that day. So that was like out of the blue, but everything that I've done so far has been through referrals.
Yes. Yeah, there's some secret sauce there. I couldn't agree more. It's like you found a way to add value before you asked anything from anyone. And I think that was the exact same strategy that Emily and I had with Carwell Design, as we were like, look, we don't have a ton of experience, but we know that we can add value here. So like, who needs us? Right? Like we've designed a couple of our own without asking you, like without, building a portfolio on our own dime. And now that you've seen that we can do it, like here we are to help. And that's exactly how we started rolling, was just off of referrals. It wasn't really hunting people down. It was like putting your skin in the game first.
Right. And you asked how do I pitch myself to the owners? Like when I get on calls, it's actually like the opposite. I go at the approach. It's really like a mindset thing, but I'm in the approach that I'm the one doing them a service by me managing their property. Like, yes, they're technically helping me out. Like, yes, I'm making more money with their property, but it's like, I don't need their property. If they're not going to be a perfect client for me, then I don't want them. So when I get on those calls, it's really like the one that called me who said, "Hey, do you manage that property? Can you manage ours?" I said, "Absolutely. I'm looking to take on more properties." But I said, "I'm just going to be transparent with you. This is how I work with all of my owners." And it didn't start this way. I learned this the hard way. But I said to him, "This is how I work. Once a month, I'm going to send you an email. On that email, it's going to have the owner's report. On the owner's report, you're going to see exactly how much money we made, how much our expenses were, and how much you owe me. Basically, all you need to do is reply to that email with a thumbs up if it looks good. If for some reason something looks off, we can absolutely have a discussion about it. But if you say it's good, I'm going to charge your credit card, my co-hosting fee." That's how I do it. And I said, during the week, between every single month, the last of the month when I send you the email, I'm like, there should really be nothing that's communicated between us, unless if it's an emergency or something that's like important. I say, as far as like, why did you send this message to the guest? Why is it priced like this? I just tell them like, that is not how I operate. If you're looking for someone like that, it's just not me. But I think I'm even more comfortable with it now because I know my worth and I know who I want to work with, because I worked with owners and I currently work with owners who are more pains in the butt. But now I'm just like, listen, this is how I work. If you like it, awesome. Like, you're going to be added to my other successful properties. If not, totally fine. We're just not a good fit.
Yeah, that's such a good way to do it. And we ended up having to learn that lesson too. But like, people are hiring you for a reason, because you're the professional, because they clearly can't do it on their own. And so if you're going out and hiring a professional to do it, you need to trust them to do their job. Now, if like you were going off and making tons of mistakes all the time, it would make more sense for them to be like on your butt about it. But they're hiring you for a reason. So when they're like nitpicking everything that you do, it doesn't make sense. It's like, why did you hire me in the first place? Like, I'm supposed to help you. I'm supposed to take stuff off of your plate. So like, don't nitpick me.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I say to them, I'm like, I only work with owners who want to be 100% hands off and don't have to do anything. Like, if you're someone who wants to do stuff, then this isn't a good fit. It's almost like everyone is like, no, I don't want to do anything. Because I think some owners might be scared of, like, giving up control. But if they hear from me that, like, I only work with people that don't want to actually do any of the work, it's like, oh, wait, that kind of sounds nice. And they're like, oh. And plus, you've worked with that's how I do it now. But they also think to themselves, okay, well, that's how he's doing it with his other properties. So that it's kind of like validating.
Last night I had a moment like I have my arbitrage properties that are managed by a management company, and then I manage my own lake house because it's new, right? Like anytime I have a new property, I want to be intimately involved. I want to make sure that all the kinks are worked out. I want to make sure that the relationships with the team is like solid. But with the arbitrage properties yesterday, when I had too much tequila, I saw that I had a message come through, and it was like someone who was like wanted to stay in an arbitrage property but wanted to know the exact unit number like before booking, and I was like like that's a red flag for me. Like, why do you need to know that? And they were like, we wanted to see the floor plan, like all of this like very fishy stuff. And so I immediately messaged my management company. I'm like, hey, like this is how we should respond, yada yada. And then the second I sent it, I was like, they know this. Like, what? No, I was like, I literally, the next text that I sent them, I was like, never mind, you do you. Like, I know you know how to handle it. Like, I'm stepping away again. Like, I pay you guys to do this, and you guys have done it well for literal years at this point. Like, never mind. I don't even know why I opened the message. Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, you're right. Like, even internally with Superhost Labs, the management side of things, within us, where we're managing our investors' properties and properties that we own, I think that we're going through that exact same phase of like desperately wanting to like appease every single property owner that's like within our side of things. And so the guy who kind of handles it, he's like, yeah, it's not uncommon for me to wake up to 200 WhatsApp messages every day from all different hosts, not even guests, it's hosts. And I was like, we need to, that's a bottleneck. No.
Yeah.
Fix it immediately.
Right. It's just like setting the expectation up front as well. And like one thing I ask these owners is how much money like are you looking to make on this property? And I obviously make sure it's realistic on my side, but like how much money are you expecting to make? And they tell me the number. And, we kind of break it down by month. So we kind of have an understanding of pricing and where we want our revenue to be at. So I'm like, listen, if I'm hitting your numbers and I'm getting close to it and, what we kind of agreed is reasonable, it's like, what do you need to tell me? Like, what is there to talk about? Like, yeah, we have an owner now that he is one of the owners that I didn't vet in the beginning. He was my first client that wasn't my partner's properties. And he doesn't, I set expectations a little bit up front with him, but not fully to the extent that I should have. And whenever we get a message from our guests, them complaining about anything, like I already respond and he texts me, this is unacceptable. I'm like, I know it's unacceptable. Like you gotta, like either you trust me or you don't. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't had to deal with that side of it a whole lot yet, but I personally would get a co-host or a management company instantly. Like but I also, I don't want to do any like arbitrage or anything like that. And I've learned a lot from Sarah. So looks like she dropped out. Hold on.
The last thing I heard was you were saying that like every single time that a guest complains about something, he's like, "This is
Oh
unacceptable."
yeah,
It hits you from the
yeah.
backside as well.
He texts me and says like, yeah, this is unacceptable, and I'm like, I know it's unacceptable. Like my job is to make sure that obviously we're hitting higher standards. And I texted him back. I said, listen, I know this is unacceptable. Like this is not my standard. But I said, and it was an issue with our cleaner. I said, I want to say a couple things. Number one, we have a 4.98 rating. Like we have dang near perfect rating. Like trust me, I know firsthand that this is not acceptable. And the reason why we have a 4.98 rating is not like an accident. It's not like these issues happen a lot. We had like 2 issues with our cleaner over like a 6-month period. They were very minor things. The cleaner was getting used to it, used to the property, and there's like I don't expect honestly. This might be like the only one who has this opinion. But as far as my cleaners go, I don't expect absolute perfection. Now, obviously, again, I have very high standards for my cleaners, but at the end of the day, especially for like these huge properties, it's like out of the over 6 months, if 2 minor things happen, like I'm not gonna like go crazy over it. Like things happen. We give them a checklist. We have them now. We're starting to have them take pictures on Turnover B&B. So we're improving it. But even with checklists and Turnover B&B, like little things are going to happen, and it's just about how you respond and react to them. Obviously, it's all about prevention at first, but if I know my cleaner is super trustworthy, really good at what she does, it's like if I did a walkthrough of that house, I still wouldn't even have caught the errors that these guests are finding because they're living there. So it's like when minor things happen, I don't go crazy on my cleaners. I call them, I send them screenshots so that they can see the guest anger. And I say, listen, this is one thing that you missed. Just make sure you don't miss it again. And if it's a recurring issue, obviously that's terrible. But my cleaners don't have recurring issues. It's always just every couple months, it's one little thing here and there. And I think honestly that's, at least for my properties, that's normal. I don't know if you guys have a different experience, but cleaners are not perfect. And if I cleaned it, I can promise you it would not be perfect either. So I don't know. That's my take.
Amen. Amen. I posted that TikTok a few, like maybe last week or so, and I had an emotional moment, and the guest had no complaints at all and left us a 4-star review on the cleanliness. And this cleaner is like, one, she doesn't require any attention at all. You know, she's like so good, and she ironically lives 2 doors down from the property. So it's like nice. The most ideal situation in the entire world for a cleaner. And they do everything, right? They do the cleaning, they do the maintenance, they do the lawn care. Like wow. It's a husband and wife duo that's just like this. They were going to have to like leave the lake because they couldn't find work for them. And this is like just the perfect case scenario for them. So I know that they appreciate it. I know that they value it. I know that I can trust them. And the guest who left a 4-star review, I was like, kind of came onto her heart. I was like, you know, this is unacceptable. We cannot have this. Like, I really want, like, and it's a new property, right? So there's like heightened emotion around it. And literally before she could even respond, I'm like, I'm so sorry. That came off so disrespectful. like, please, like, oh my gosh. I just felt so bad because I'm like, I know this lady loves this job. Like, I know she takes it seriously. Like, my parents have gone up there to double check her work just so I can like build that trust being at a distance. And so I immediately was just like, no, like at that point, you just really have to prioritize your cleaner because that's the relationship that matters more than the one-off guest who had like this insane standard uncleanliness in a 50-year-old lake house. Like little things will get missed at spring. There's pollen, there's dust. Like it just is. It just is. So immediately I was like, oh my gosh, no. Like, Sarah, who are you? Like, do not be a bad boss.
That's so true.
Yeah, you've got a really healthy take on it because you're right. I mean, there's just absolutely no way that everything is going to be like cookie cutter spotless every single time. But if they're consistent about getting 5-star reviews, what more can you ask for?
Exactly.
Humans make mistakes. There's like human error in every single career field. There's no way that people can be perfect 100% of the time. How many times have probably all of us messed up? It baffles me when people get on people, especially about like cleaning stuff. I've been at properties that were like clearly not cleaned because I found stuff under the bed. And like, I didn't get mad. I was just like, hey, for the next person who comes in, maybe clean that up. Like, I'm not going to yell at you about it. And it was fine. And we just leave 5-star reviews.
Yeah, honestly. All right. So we've got a couple more questions for you here. Emily, do you want the next question?
Sure. What's the most valuable piece of advice that you've received from somebody when it comes to investing?
I would say on the safe end is just buying for cash flow. I mean, that's what I do for my investments that I've had. And then when I look for properties, right now, at least where I'm at, is I want cash flow. People are like, well, you can make so much money from appreciation over 5-10 years. I'm like, that's cool. And maybe once I have $1 bajillion, I can care less about the cash flow. But as long as a property is cash flowing and you can hold on to your property, like yes, it's going to go up in value in the long run, which is obviously great. But you can only hold on to a property if the mortgage isn't weighing you down via cash flow. So I guess that's like my number one thing is just if the property is cash flowing, then it's already a good sign. If it's not going to cash flow, it's close to break even, then it's just not an investment for me, because right when those rents decrease $200 or maybe even demand for short-term rental stops for a month from Corona or something, at least I have not only cash reserves, but because I've had so much big cash flow coming in that it just, to me, I'd rather go the safe route and earn nice cash flow than go the risky route, earning no cash flow and hoping for a big payday in 5 to 10 years.
Oh, yes. Oh, I could dig into that for a minute. I think that, it's such an interesting perspective because, like, for example, like you and Zoe Berghoff, who we interviewed last week, we're in our 20s, right? And so a lot of the people that we will interview are in their 30s or 40s. And there's just a difference in mindset, right? And that is the beautiful thing about Airbnb is that, like, there are so many different strategies depending on what your priority is. And so, like, when we consult people, it is an immediate topic of conversation. Like, what is your priority? Is it the lifestyle play? Is it the cash flow play? Like, all of them will come in time. It's just you really have to decide what's most important right now. And then later on, the lifestyle things will come in, or the equity things, or the waterfront properties, or like whatever else. But at the beginning, right, for you, you're very cognizant of like, look, that will come, but that is not the priority right now. The priority right now is the money, and justifiably so, sure, right? We're at the bottom of the totem pole currently, working our way up. So I think it's smart.
And I think to add on one more thing, it's important to understand not only your personal investment criteria, but also when you're co-hosting, understanding what their wants and needs are. Because I have an owner, he doesn't really care about how much the property makes. Obviously I do, because I'm only getting paid a percentage, but he doesn't really care. Even this guy that called me, oh, I saw you manage this property. I said, how much money do you want to make? He goes, honestly, I don't really care. Like he didn't, like, there was no number at all that he really cared about. He's like, honestly, I kind of just bought the property. We want to make some money from it, but, just do your best. And I was like, okay, that's like a different, and not that I really change how I'm trying to make the most money no matter what, but just the fact that not everyone actually cares about making a lot of cash flow. Even for the properties that I co-host, it's like I'm making more money than the owners on some of these in some months, because they have a mortgage and expenses, but they don't care. Their investment thesis was just more long-term, just like as long as they don't have to pay the mortgage, they're fine with it. So it's really just understanding the owner's take on it too.
1000%. Yeah. I think Emily and I are going through a phase of really learning that now, being with Superhost Labs. And like, right now the investment side of things is only open to accredited investors, and it will be open to non-accredited, but the SEC has to be at our dinner table for a while before they give us some thumbs up there. But in dealing with accredited investors and understanding kind of how their brain operates, it's just so foreign and polar opposite to us who are on the bottom, who like are not making a gazillion dollars a year, because for them, it really is a hide your money in real estate play. And so they're like much less concerned about, like, of course, they're picking short-term rentals because it's the highest cash flowing one. So they're like, look, if we're going to park our money somewhere, let it be the one that's making the most money. But ultimately, they're like much less concerned about what that monthly payout looks like, because they want the bonus depreciation. They want, so many other things aside from that cash flow. And so for us, we're like, what? Like,
I know, it's so funny. I'm so with you. Like people don't expect, like they don't, these people that have already a lot of money. It's almost like, for some of them, not all of them, but like getting more money back in the next couple of years, like that doesn't actually do anything for them. It almost like hurts them in a way. They would rather just like invest so they get the bonus depreciation, like you said, and the cash flow. It's like, if it comes, cool. If not, like that's fine for a lot of people too. It's like either this or I pay tens, if not hundreds of $1,000s in taxes. So it's like, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, I know. It's just such a foreign concept. It's like, for us, it's just been a big bridge of a learning curve here.
Yep.
Okay, Emily, do you have another question, or is it my turn?
It's your turn.
Oh, yay. Okay, here we go. Has there been any big pivotal? I think I said
every time.
Why do I do this question? I clearly can't say the word. Has there been any pivotal moments for you during your journey that's changed your overall strategy in real estate?
Yes. So going back to kind of the beginning, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, found Bigger Pockets, started networking with dozens, if not hundreds of people before I kind of made my, okay, where do I want to go next? And my first thought was, I want to go into multifamily real estate, big apartment complexes. That's what I want to do. Why did I want to do that? Because I saw the Grant Cardones and all these gurus like posting stuff online. I'm like, geez, they look like they have a lot of money. I heard from someone like you can average like $100 per door. Per door. So I'm like, okay, if they have 10,000 doors, they make $100 minimum. And then I realized that, okay, they don't actually own a big percentage of these. They own maybe, if it's syndication, it's an 80-20 split, and then they own a percentage of the 20%. So I said, okay, this is actually over like months of time. This was not overnight. I kind of fell for the gurus for like months, but I realized, okay, I heard this from a podcast, and they were like, okay, if you're part of a 100-unit deal and you own like 5% of the deal, that's like a 5-unit property. If you own 1%, it's 1 unit. So it's not like, yeah, there could be some other benefits to being in larger deals. You can be more diverse, whatever the benefits. There are benefits for sure. But as far as like cash flow, which was what I was seeking for, I was like, this is not like where I'm at now. Like I said, you can always bring something to the table, whether that's just your time or your hustle. But with these big properties, it was like, what was I going to bring to the table that was going to be significant enough to get me like percentages of the deal? So I just realized that multifamily wasn't for me right now. And that's when I made the pivot to just single family rentals.
Yeah. With those because we've had conversations with people before about like, I think it was Taylor on our team. He was like, I'd rather own what was it, Sarah? 5% of a grape than 5% of a watermelon or something like that. Or like he would rather have like a bigger percentage of something small than like a small percentage of something big. And that's kind of, I feel like, what you were talking about. Like having such a small percentage of something that's so massive, your cash flow is not going to be the same as like having a small percentage of something that's small.
For sure. And something I want to say that I don't really share this at all, really ever. I just share this to prove my point with like the whole unit count thing doesn't matter. Because one of the things I've seen, especially on social media, is everyone's boasting about their unit count. How many units do you own? I'm like, well, how much cash flow are you getting from those properties? How much percentage do you actually own? So I'm sharing this strictly for the fact to show, like, to prove my own point that I'm technically a general partner in a 64-unit apartment complex, okay, in Missouri. From just networking and being part of the right groups, I got the opportunity to be a general partner. So I could go around saying, oh, I have 64 units. But again, I don't share that with anybody, strictly for the fact that from that property, I earn $75 per month from that property. So it's like a whole different, if I told you, yeah, I have a 64 unit out in Missouri, you'd be like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Like there's no way anyone would have thought that I was only making $75 a month from it. Why am I only making $75 a month? Because I own like a very small portion of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't advertise I have 64 units because people would just like think of it completely wrong. But I only share it to show that unit count literally makes no difference because you never know how much someone owns And in my example, I literally get $75 a month. I make more from so many other things than that 64 unit property. So there, and of course there are benefits from it. Like we're doing a refinance from it. So I'll get some money back and it'll be technically no money into the deal. So it's cool, but it's not equivalent to 64 units, you know?
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So like what staying as a part of that, is there like more benefits? Like obviously you said you're refinancing, so you might get like something back from that. But as far as like the reason that you decided to stay in that or even get into it in the first place with that percentage, like what was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah. So long story, but I'll make it like super short. When I was like in networking, especially in the multifamily stuff, I was doing a lot of essentially like value exchanges with people. So to get into the mastermind that I joined, it was $5,000. I didn't have $5,000 to join it. So I basically did a value exchange with the guy who ran the group. The exchange was if I basically recruit people into his mastermind, he'll give me a spot in for free. So it was like very even trade.
Gotcha.
And even for him, I brought him like tens of thousands of dollars worth of business with, you know, and $5,000 of that was to get me in the mastermind. But the other of it was I was just trying to be a good person. And I believed in the mastermind too. So a lot of value exchanges. So for this deal in particular, it was basically like the last value he added to me was, okay, you can get into this deal, put $5,000 in, and we'll call it a deal. We'll call it even, basically. Okay. So the only reason why I got part of this deal was, again, just the value exchange, and very creative. Like it's not something that is totally repeatable necessarily. Mm-hmm. Again, why I don't talk about it too much, but just all about relationships.
Yeah, Sarah's having some technical difficulties, so we'll start wrapping up. But I mean, I guess I'm seeing like you're gaining a community from it. So even, I mean, $75 a month is $75 a month, and you're gaining a community and connections from it. So totally makes sense, like when you say it like that. But yeah, we'll start wrapping up. Something's happening with Sarah's stuff, so she keeps getting kicked out. But thank you so much for coming on. I feel like your journey has been so unique, and you started at such a young age that you have like such a good experience to share with people. But before we go, can you kind of plug everything, where people can find you, anything specific that you want people to know?
Yeah, for sure. Best way to find me is either Instagram or TikTok. My name is _Bailey_Kramer, or just look up Bailey Kramer and you'll find me on Instagram or TikTok. And then I have like some other, like I'm starting to post like YouTube shorts and Facebook group and stuff like that, but Instagram and TikTok are kind of my main hubs, and then anything you need and more to connect with me will be through those platforms.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll find all of your stuff and tag it in the bio below, so you guys will be able to find Bailey really easily. You can find Sarah and I at superhostlabs.com. We are at superhostlabs on Instagram and TikTok, and then Sarah and I personally are at the Carwells. So thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye guys.